Mr. Chairman, my amendment directs FEMA to conduct a comprehensive study of the increase in demand for FEMA's emergency response and disaster relief services as a result of weather-related disasters associated with global warming. It will tell us what FEMA can expect in 5, 10, and 20 years from now. The assessment will include an analysis of the budgetary, material, and manpower implications of meeting such increased demand for FEMA services. We've been warned that we should expect to see more extreme weather, like severe storms and snowstorms that can come in an El Nino season. We've been warned that we'll see stronger hurricanes and hurricanes with more total rainfall. We've been warned to expect heat waves. We've been told to expect melting glaciers, rising sea levels, swallowing low-lying land in places like Bangladesh, Florida, the Gulf Coast, and Manhattan. We've been warned that rising temperatures will force infectious diseases to move north or upwards in elevation to expose previously unexposed and therefore defenseless populations. We've been warned that droughts will intensify and lengthen, straining already strained water supplies and bringing crop failures. Droughts also place those areas at greater risk for wildfires. These warnings come from the most respected, most credible, most well-studied scientists this world has to offer. This was most recently affirmed by the fourth assessment report by the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. Turns out they were right. The 11 hottest years on record have occurred since 1994. 2 of the 3 last hurricane seasons have broken records. The polar ice cap is melting even faster than our previous best estimates. Greenland's ice is melting. Permafrost in Alaska is thawing, causing homes to crumble. Residents of low-lying nations like Tuvalu have applied for entry into other countries as climate refugees and have been denied. West Nile virus from Africa has taken a toehold in the U.S. The European heat wave of 2003 killed well over 15,000 people. Carbon dioxide concentrations in the atmosphere are at levels scientists say have not occurred in 400,000 years. These effects are directly in line with the warnings we've received from the scientific community, even though it is difficult to attribute all of these effects directly to climate change. Some have been able to. A 2006 article in the journal Nature blames half of the risk associated with the European heat on human-induced warming. The World Health Organization has estimated that 150,000 deaths every year can already be attributed to climate change. Hurricane Katrina gave us another grim warning, telling us not only what we should expect, but showing us what happens if we're not prepared. Katrina showed us that when disasters hit, the most vulnerable among us become even more vulnerable because they lack the resources and access to cope. That was made clear as image after image of those hit the hardest were people of modest means and people of color. In fact, in the Chicago heat wave of 1995, African Americans were twice as likely to die as Caucasians. The elderly, many of whom could not afford air conditioning, made up most of the victims. Katrina showed us that disasters are expensive. We have so far spent about $77 billion on disaster assistance for Hurricanes Katrina, Rita, and Wilma alone. The private sector is increasingly concerned. Insurance companies, whose very existence rely on their predictive abilities, have seen enough to make them drop certain coverage and conduct campaigns to try to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions. Reinsurance companies in particular, like Swiss Re, have taken a leadership role in promoting action on climate change. Katrina has showed us that an unprepared FEMA costs time, money, and ultimately lives. If past is prologue, we have an obligation to look at the future in order to prepare. We have to allow FEMA to take into account the realities of the challenges that await them. At this moment, we can still choose among policy options. We can deal with the effects of climate change in one of 2 ways. We can acknowledge the extraordinary challenges before us and prepare for them, voluntarily and aggressively, steadily, predictably, and controllably. Or we can continue to create policy as if there's no problem and wait for the severe weather to control our pace of adaptation.